Depending on who you speak to, Super Mario Galaxy is either a love letter to fans, a sign that the studios are coming to their senses, or an example of everything wrong with cinema. An avatar for the degradation and brain rot center to the fall of Western entertainment. To some, Mario is a clear path forward. To others, Mario is a clear path to the death of theaters and entertainment. But the problem is both of these hyper-polarizing opinions are a little bit true and a little bit ridiculous. Because Mario is not a movie, it's more like a wake-up call. It's the sobering moment when you realize maybe things have gone too far. It's the realization that we've been in a slump and that perhaps our standards have been lowered. I think Super Mario Galaxy serves as a moment of clarity, the point where we realize just how broken most film discourse has become. Now, I can imagine some might accuse the Super Mario Galaxy movie of being a cash grab. But I think it's more akin to the sort of one-liner a charming bank robber might recite, as he stands in the window about to hop into a perfectly orchestrated getaway truck. That is to say, Nintendo has built the perfect consumer ecosystem, and the Super Mario Galaxy movie is what you get when you know you've pulled off the perfect heist. But the thing is, the heist might still be quite entertaining. In fact, it might make the news, and as long as nobody gets hurt, it might go down as a memorable experience. I think that people are trying to judge Mario as a piece of cinema or compare it to the great children's movies of all time. But in reality, the Super Mario Galaxy movie is a product to remind people of their love of another product from a company that long since perfected that product. It sort of reminds me of that Brennan Lee Mulligan sketch where he pretends to be the CEO of Oreos and he has to tell people not to work so hard because they created the perfect cookie.
I get it. You're losing your mind. We made the perfect cookie 100 years ago. And now there's no work left to do. I'm telling you, we did it. We won. Go home, be with your families, raise your children. Stop making new Oreos.
By the way, if you haven't seen this sketch, definitely check it out. It's hilarious. My point is, innovation is not a priority with Mario. It scratches a niche that does not make sense in terms of what we usually expect in traditional storytelling. It exists to reaffirm the community and shared experiences of a consumer base. In a weird way, it is similar to the Barbie movie. While a story was attempted in both, the main attraction was not the themes and motifs. It was the moments of recognition between the audience and the toys they had purchased or had purchased for them. They're both films that feel in part like an Easter egg hunt, where a big part of the appeal is the shared excitement that comes from collective nostalgia. The Super Mario Galaxy movie is very similar. The story acts as a vehicle to get from one Easter egg to the next. But whereas the Barbie movie felt the need to try and funnel the product into a statement, Mario clearly feels no such need. By the way, we just wanted to take a moment to reassure everyone that we are not AI, and thank you for watching.
But why is this style of movie becoming so common? They don't make for great films, they don't create the sort of stories that will define generations, but they do allow people to connect over a shared experience. The thing is, the Mario movie is the epitome of the amusement park film. Which brings us to a key problem in discussing film. The inability of many movie reviewers and even critics to separate the quality of filmmaking from personal preferences. Or more simply, the understanding that liking something doesn't automatically make it good. I see people wrestle with this with so many films. They have an enjoyable experience and it blinds them to the flaws of the film. I like many films that are really quite bad. There are many things that go into making a great film, and it's easy to fall in love with films that do everything right. But you can also fall in love with a film that does only one of those things well.
Oh, hi, Mark.
Though it may be a failure as a whole, it can still be an endearing failure. This also works the other way around. I see many reviews from people who get so stuck trying to praise a film for the techniques the creators attempted that they essentially end up giving the film an A for effort. I think one of the biggest problems is there are so many outside forces contributing to warped film criticism. I think that movies like Super Mario Galaxy really underline how much of film discussion is compromised by a need for a specific outcome. There's a real sense that theaters and Hollywood are on their last legs. And this has led to many critics and commentators who are worried about the industry treating a lot of average and even bad films with kid gloves. Sometimes it feels like critics have had to endure films that they didn't like to help keep the industry alive. And I think many of the films that perform the best are the opposite of the things that people who are entrenched in Hollywood want to review. The argument could be made that the films being made are the opposite of the type of films that the filmmakers even want to make. And this has created this sort of reality where much of the discussion around film just feels dishonest or insincere. And I think that's because people are so afraid to talk about films in a scope that actually makes sense for the films they're discussing. Films become overly important for the future of a certain franchise and therefore studios. And many commentators and critics talk about films like teachers, afraid to grade a student because they know that the student's future depends on them not failing. And so when a film like Super Mario Galaxy comes out, I think there's almost a backlog of criticism that's projected onto the film. Criticism that should have been lodged against the films that they felt the need to protect. And because nobody's concerned about Super Mario Galaxy struggling financially, the claws come out. And that's not to say there isn't a lot of intelligent and fair criticism of the film. It's just that much of the criticism seems like a projection. Like what happens when you bite your tongue for too long and there's a backlog of disappointment, of opinions that were not expressed because they believed it could have serious consequences for the studios and the industry as a whole.
There's a real problem with overly charitable reviews. As our friend the DA pointed out, a lot of the reviews and discussions surrounding the film industry feels like charity. A lot of the time, going to the movies feels like a charitable contribution to a struggling foundation. The thing is, Super Mario doesn't need charity. The film made over $600 million in its first 2 weeks, so critics don't feel the need to be charitable. Super Mario Galaxy is far from the first film to be uninspired. There have been many low-effort animated films recently. If someone feels like the studios are not putting enough effort into the stories of these films, I think that's completely fair. I'm never going to argue that there should be less effort put into storytelling, even if it's in things that are brushed off as children's films. But the insinuation that Mario is the problem with children's films or movies today is ridiculous, and ignores the long road of bad films before Mario that make Mario seem viable in comparison. And as we have discussed, Super Mario Galaxy is a movie adaptation of a well-guarded product. It's always going to have to thread a pretty narrow needle. But what is the excuse for the original animated films that have been made over the past couple years? Should we all want films to be better with more significant storytelling? Absolutely. But using the Super Mario Galaxy movie as the punching bag, while praising films that are as weak, or in many cases worse, is why the studios feel enabled to underdeliver. I think another reason the Super Mario Galaxy discourse feels so odd is because of the distinct lack of controversy surrounding the film. Sadly, many films today are not treated like movies that you go and see for enjoyment. They're treated like causes. There are many people who express their political and social opinions through the guise of film discussion. This type of discourse has become incredibly obvious. Films become these battlegrounds where people show up to argue about the social implications of the project while never actually buying a ticket to see the film. This has led to many films being treated unreasonably. They become symbols to be torn down or protected instead of art to be discussed. And I think that because there is essentially no controversy with Super Mario Galaxy, it has exposed a lot of people who have very little insight when the film cannot be co-opted. Many of these people don't actually like movies, they like politics. I honestly believe there is a sort of toxic existentialism that makes it very hard for these people to accurately or even fairly appraise movies. This seems to be rooted in the need to ascribe deeper meaning to the mundane. Every movie must reflect a deeper truth. And this type of film discussion looks an awful lot like searching for messages in a bowl of alphabet soup. We see this most often with the insertion of political or tribal meaning. As a result, things cannot simply be average. They have to be a profound manifestation of a deeper worldview, usually because the person reviewing the film needs it to be. This type of film discussion is exhausting, because things like the quality of storytelling or filmmaking don't matter as much as what the film affirms about the critic's worldview. And this is not unique to Super Mario Galaxy. It's just this film highlights the absurdity of this behavior. Films have become a Rorschach painting for critics and commentators, but with Super Mario Galaxy, it feels like we actually saw someone spill the ink, and the illusion is broken. So the wildly disparate interpretations feel unbefitting of the movie, while one person is languishing over how Super Mario Galaxy is a sign that cinema is dead, that if this is the future, theaters are doomed to be held up by a glorified string of TikTok reels. while another might look at Super Mario Galaxy as proof that the industry is healing, that Hollywood is returning to the business of trying to satisfy their customers, that this film is a great victory. And while these sorts of takeaways seem overblown, they are understandable in the consequence of the highly adversarial ways that films have been discussed for the last decade. Films have been sold by studios as being more than entertainment to people so desperate for affirmation of their beliefs that they're willing to buy some pretty insane stories. Fairy tales like, this corporation cares about me, or that this cash grab means that we are winning, or that voicing my enjoyment for this performative corporate project means I'm on the right side of history. And when films are argued about from a place of existential need, they cannot really be enjoyed, let alone discussed in a way that makes sense. This has been a problem with film critique for a long time. It's just that Super Mario Galaxy is a film so straightforward in its intentions, so bereft of deeper meaning, that it highlights the absurdity of so much of the modern film discourse.
The inverse to the problem of people reviewing film from a place of existential need is the complete rejection of meaning, and it has been equally damaging to movies and film discourse. Escapism is important. Film should be a way to remove ourselves from our current position. It's a big part of the theatrical experience, and people naturally want to experience things outside of their own life. But when the need for escapism leads to a lowering of standards, it can be a problem. I think that there has been a vast lowering of standards due to the need to escape the bleak state of reality for many people. And I think that's actually entirely understandable. But at the same time, it doesn't lead to a healthy space for film discussion. When something becomes a coping tool, objectivity tends to go out the window. And I think the industry's pounced on this as an opportunity to get away with offering less. I'm not saying that every film needs to be some cerebral exploration of the human condition, but there are just way too many films being defended as great turn off your brain movies. There are so many awful films that are over elevated because standards are so low. Films that would have been the standard 20 years ago are treated like masterpieces today. And it's opened the door for the studios to make cameo-packed, key-jangling franchise installments and have those films get absurdly high reviews. And I'm not blaming the people for enjoying those films, because when the studios seem to legitimately despise the idea of appeasing customers, at least the cameos and Easter eggs feel like an acknowledgement that the fans and audience exist. In a weird way, there's at least a little creative integrity in the Easter egg model, because some films don't even bother, and instead try to float films by emotionally strong-arming the audience. Instead of packing the films with iconography from the franchise, they appeal to generic emotions. Films that boil down to things like, are you a dog lover? Or trying to bait audiences with cuteness and on-screen merch, or bringing back dead characters, or invoking universal themes like the loss of loved ones, and daring the audience not to empathize. And this leads to the type of criticism where the story isn't even discussed. People will resonate with a film because it reminds them of their pet or their loved ones or something they went through. And the film is discussed not in terms of how well it built its own world and story, but by the feelings the audience project onto the film from their own life. This isn't just a shortcut, it's a form of emotional manipulation. It removes the need to develop characters the audience grows to care about and stories they can invest in because it appeals to something everyone already cares about, themselves. Context matters, and the bar should be higher than, I like this film because it reminded me of something I already care about, or it spoke to something that I identify as. And all of this excuses shoddy work from the studios, because instead of holding them to a standard, we remind them that we will not only watch, but often fight about and defend an ever-declining product. And I don't want to think about film as a product, but when we let the formula be this simple, the people making movies are going to ship the minimum viable product. Our entertainment will be the thing that is the easiest to mass produce, and films will feel like something that rolled off an assembly line.
So while people are talking about Super Mario Galaxy like it is the turning point, for better or worse, of cinema, I'm more concerned with the type of film criticism that led us here. If you've made it this far, thank you so much for enduring our way too deep discussion about Super Mario Galaxy. The irony is not lost on us.
And thank you to our members and subscribers, and to everyone who joins us for our live streams where we flesh out these ideas.